Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the second video in our series on how to study the Bible. And today we're going to look at the second developmental question that we've been considering, which is, what does it mean? Last time you looked at what did you see, and you collected all the data that you could. And remember, we're studying in Revelation chapter 3, 14 to 22. So that's the Church of Laodicea. And so you've collected all that data, and now the next step is to start to interpret that data. Like, what does it mean? I've discovered all of these things about this particular Bible passage. What do those things mean? And this is where you apply what knowledge you have to what you've read. Like, just try to dig into it and get as much information out of it as you can. This is a crucial step, but one that can quickly get frustrating because you might not know. And that's the thing, when we're students of the Bible, we're growing in our knowledge. And so you may come across a passage that this step becomes very frustrating because I just don't know. And that's okay. You're learning right now. It's not a big deal if you don't know everything about the passage, because that's why you're in it. So you're just going to apply as much as you can towards what you're learning. And at this stage, it's okay to be wrong. Like, if you check something and you find some data and you think, okay, well, this is what it means, and it turns out that you're wrong, that's okay. Because like I said, this is a learning process. And it's not a big deal if you're wrong right now. It's you'll correct for that as you go. So we're going to look at Revelation 3, 14 to 22 again. And so I want you to pause the video and write down all of your interpretations of Revelation 3, 14 to 22. What I do is you saw in the other video where I numerically cataloged all of my data. What I would do is just take that data and move it straight across. So number one from what do I see becomes number one in what does it mean? And then later on in the how does it apply section, that'll be number one again. So you just carry the data forward. That way it's easy to catalog and it's easy to go back in your study to find out where your data is, because it can end up being a lot of pages if you're into this for a long time. So anyways, that's the what does it mean step. Take some time, go through Revelation 3, 14 to 22, and I'll see you in the next segment. Okay, so now we're into the data. I've taken it from my scribbly writing and typed it out for you. This is an image of what we looked at in the last video, the what do I see data. And you see that I've circled number 3. We're going to take number 3 and go through this video series together. So right now, what the data that I saw was that the Laodiceans are neither hot nor cold. Jesus wishes they were one or the other. And so when I move over here to the what does it mean data, you can see that there's a lot more of it. That's because you're starting to conjecture about what you think this means. So there's going to be a lot more data. But number 3, you can see there again, from previous study, and this is true, I know that this means useful, not that they had to be only hot, which is kind of the original way that I understood it. But because they're not hot or cold, they have no use, and cold water and hot water were useful back then. But so because they're literally useless, well, that's me moving into number 4. But anyways, the Laodiceans are neither hot nor cold. They're somewhere in the middle, not useful for anything at all. And so you can see how I moved the data from number 3 to number 3. And I've done that with all the other numbers as well, just so I can keep my thoughts straight as I go through this. Obviously, I'm collecting a lot more data because I'm going to communicate this in a sermon. You may or may not come up with this much stuff, and it's okay if you do or you don't. It's just your personal study of the Word, and you want to go as deep as you can or as deep as you have time for. All right? Okay, so there you have it. There's the kind of the what does it mean portion explained for you a little bit. Just a couple of points though before we wrap up. One of them is that context matters. And so when you're reading the Bible and you see an if or a therefore or a so then or one of those transitional statements where you realize, oh, what was being read before kind of matters. it would be good to go back and check those particular parts of the passage that you're reading. Even if it's kind of like outside of what you're studying, it can throw some light on the interpretation of the passage that you're reading. So you want to make sure that if you can see that there's a transitional statement or something that takes you back, definitely go back and read that. It will help you to understand the passage a lot better. That's one of the dangers of doing standalone Bible study, just chunks of verses, is you can kind of get the wrong idea of what a passage means. And you want to make sure that you interpret it correctly in its original context, so to the people that it was being presented to first, so that you can correctly apply it to yourself. And that's the next video, is how does it apply, and we'll get to that. All right, so that's a word about context. And just one last thing, as you study, you will find you'll come to the end of your knowledge at some point. I come to the end of my knowledge all the time, and so I have a library of study books that I check, and the church owns that library. So if you're really serious and you would like to come in and verify or check some of your facts, you are absolutely welcome to come into the church and grab our library and check and see where you're at. If you don't feel like doing that, and I don't blame you, you may want to buy a study Bible. A study Bible generally has a lot of good thoughts on the context and some interpretation issues that you may run into. It may be able to shed some light that you don't necessarily have on the passage that you're studying. I call them cheat notes, and sometimes they do feel like that because it just kind of gives you the answer instead of you digging in and studying. So what I usually do is I put down all of my data collection with a what do I see, and then what does it mean just out of my own head. If I don't know, I just write I don't know. And then I'll go check, because otherwise it might lead to a bit of a lazy habit. Like you might just say, well, my study Bible knows, so I'll just read that. But we really want you to learn how to dig into the Word and how to bring as much truth as you can out of that. And so, rather than go to the study Bible immediately, it would be good to try to puzzle it out as much as you can. And then go to the study Bible, or talk to a pastor or a friend who you know might know something about this. I would cautiously discourage you from checking the internet first. The internet is full of everybody's opinions, and it's really easy for a guy who has zero learning in the Bible and zero experience to sound just as professional as someone who doesn't. And so it's a lot better to talk about this stuff with other believers. In fact, that's kind of part of your discipleship as a disciple of Christ, is to talk about the Word with other people, do it together. That's the Holy Spirit is present with you, and He can help you understand it. So, the internet is a place that I do go, but it's rarely to interpret the Bible. It's more to find stories or maybe just like a specific pastor's opinion, like Piper or MacArthur or Chan or Chandler or whatever. They have a lot of their stuff online, and so I'll check with them because I know that they're solid men of the Word. But it's very difficult sometimes to discern who's solid, who's not, unless you have quite a bit of learning. So not that you don't, it's just that the internet is full of malicious opinion, especially about our God. So that's the second step. What does it mean? And looking forward to seeing you in the next step. How does it apply?